When his son lay wounded in battle, Zeus looked at him and remarked, "He is the most hateful of all the gods, and had he not been my son, he would have surely ended up in Tartarus with Cronus and the Titans." Who was the son of Zeus? Ares, the savage god of senseless war, and the almost universally detested of the 12 Olympian gods of ancient Greece. But when does that matter when the goddess of beauty herself is charmed by him? Ares fathered many children with human women, but is forever bound to his true love, Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. As for the rest of his family, he was born to Zeus and Hera, or possibly just Hera, via a special herb. And despite being the god of war and courage, his sister Athena shares a similar title as the goddess of war and wisdom. They are like two sides of the same coin. Ares is the chaos and destruction of war, found in the middle of the rage and pain of fighting. But Athena is strategic and calm. She is the general, guiding the battle and waging the tide against her brother's chaos and destruction. The Greek god Ares is the most feared and hated of all, yet only possesses men of courage. Humans cannot see him, but they recognize the god of war in the storm clouds that hover over their enemies on the battlefield. He can be controlled by none other than Zeus, and although the gods live in balance on Mount Olympus, Ares is forever known for his tempestuous nature. So what does Ares look like? In ancient Greek art, Ares is always adorned by a golden helmet and bronze armor. He is often depicted driving a 4-horse chariot, accompanied by dogs or vultures. Sometimes his sons by Aphrodite, Demas, and Phobos are also shown beside him. Ancient Greek mythology is peppered with stories about Ares and his relationship to the other Olympian gods, but a few stand out as compared to the rest, and perhaps the most popular of them has to be his love affair. Ares and Aphrodite. Hephaestus, the Greek god of fire, is the patron of blacksmiths. Born hunched, his mother Hera cast him from Olympus in disgust, crippling him in the process. Although Dionysus eventually returned Hephaestus to Mount Olympus to be wed, he was ill-suited to his bride, the beautiful Aphrodite. Although there are a few stories of Aphrodite and Hephaestus' marriage, the most common is that when Zeus betrothed the two at Hephaestus' request, despite Aphrodite's distaste, they were still engaged. But a blacksmith god of fire wasn't enough to temper the lust of Ares. He and Aphrodite continued their affair in secret, enjoying clandestine meetings to conceal their affair from the other gods. But there was one whose eyes they couldn't escape. Helios, the sun god, saw Ares and Aphrodite from his place in the sky and immediately ran to tell Hephaestus of their betrayal. Hephaestus' plan. Hephaestus, consumed by rage at the thought of Aphrodite lying with Ares, hatched a plan to catch the two lovers red-handed. Using his talents as a blacksmith, Hephaestus weaved a net of fine gossamer strands, so thin they were invisible to the naked eye, even the eyes of the god of war. He adorned Aphrodite's bedchamber with the net and retreated to earth to wait. Soon Aphrodite and Ares entered her chamber, where they tumbled into her bed, only for the net to close around them, pinning them in that state to the mattress for all the gods to see. And they did. Although the goddesses stayed away out of respect for Aphrodite, the gods ran to see the beautiful goddess's form and laugh at the trapped Ares. Hephaestus swore to not release the adulterous couple until Zeus returned all the gifts Hephaestus had bestowed upon Aphrodite on their wedding day. But Poseidon, the Greek god of water and the sea, begged him to release them sooner, promising he should have all he desired if he did so. Eventually, Hephaestus released the pair, and Ares immediately fled to Thrace in embarrassment, the region along the north coast of the Aegean Sea, while Aphrodite traveled to her temple at Paphos to be attended by the Greek citizens as she licked her wounds. Ares and Adonis. The story of Hephaestus was not the only of Aphrodite and Ares' relationship. There are more tales of their alliances. both with each other and mortals that took their fancy. One of the most well-known is that of Adonis, Aphrodite's lover. Although she raised him from a babe, when he reached maturity, Aphrodite realized the true depths of her love for him and left Mount Olympus to be by his side. As the days stretched and Aphrodite continued by Adonis' side, Ares' jealousy grew until it became unsurmountable. In the end, in a fit of rage when Aphrodite was otherwise engaged, Ares sent a savage wild boar to gore Adonis. From her throne, Aphrodite heard her lover's cries and ran to earth to be by his side as he died. Ares and Heracles. One of the most famous tales in Greek mythology of Ares is the time when he encountered Heracles, and the man and god fought for dominance. The story goes that Heracles and his family found themselves in exile and, like many refugees, set out for Delphi. Along the way, they heard stories of the terrifying and bloodthirsty son of Ares named Cycnus, who was waylaying refugees on their way to the oracle. On their journey, they soon encountered Cycnus, and Heracles and his nephew immediately began to battle him. Incensed, Ares came down from Olympus to fight alongside his son and protect him, and the two were able to drive Heracles and his nephew away. But Athena was Heracles' protector and was unhappy at his loss. Using her powers of wisdom, she convinced him to return to battle and take on Cycnus once again. Between his nephew and Heracles himself, Cycnus soon lay dead on the ground and the refugees of Delphi were saved. The Battle of God and Mortal. Ares was watching and roared in pain at the loss of his beloved son. Returning to the fray himself, he began to fight Heracles in an almost unheard-of battle between god and mortal. Yet Ares found himself unable to harm the man, for his sister Athena had granted Heracles protection, and with it, the ability to harm a god. Incredibly, Heracles was able to hold his own against Ares, and even managed to wound the god, which should have not been possible for a mortal man. Tired of their fighting, Zeus eventually hurled a thunderbolt between the two, sending sparks flying and putting an end to their fight. Shocked, and with pride a little damaged, Ares limped back to Mount Olympus. Ares at the Trojan War. The Trojan War is one story in Greek mythology that almost all the gods played some part in. A lot of information on the Trojan War can be found in the Iliad, the second part of Odysseus' tale, but there are only certain parts of the battle that Ares was involved in. Before the war. Long before the Trojan War ever happened, it had been prophesied that a great war between Greeks and Trojans would take place, and the gods would be divided over it. Initially, it seemed Ares was on the side of the Greeks. After hearing the prophecy that Troy would never fall if Troilus, the young Trojan prince, lived to 20, Ares embodied the spirit of the hero Achilles and imbibed him with the desire to kill young Troilus. After the fighting began, Ares swapped sides because, although we don't know what happened, we know Ares urged the Trojan troops in conflict with his sister Athena. The gods soon grew tired of the fight and withdrew from the battle to rest and watch nearby, but Ares soon returned at Apollo's request. The god of war re-entered the fray as Acamas, a prince of Lycia. He sought out the nobles of Troy and urged them not to abandon the hero Aeneas, who was fighting on the front lines of war. Using his godly power and propensity for chaos, Ares stirred the Trojans to fight harder. He succeeded in turning the battle in their favor as the Trojans undertook great exploits to secure their position. The tide turns against Ares. All of this infuriated Athena and Hera, who had supported the Greeks thus far. Athena then went to the Greek hero and one of the key leaders in the Trojan War, Diomedes, and instructed him to meet her brother on the battlefield. But unbeknownst to Ares, Athena traveled alongside the mortal, wearing Hades' cap of invisibility. When Ares tried to kill Diomedes by flinging his spear that never missed, he was understandably shocked when it failed to reach its target. Athena deflected the spear and, whispering into Diomedes' ears, encouraged him to take it and stab the god of war. With Athena's help, Diomedes thrust the spear into Ares' belly, wounding him. His scream caused all on the battlefield to freeze in terror, as Ares turned tail and fled to heaven to bitterly complain to his father, Zeus. But Zeus dismissed the son, pleased that Athena and Hera had forced the tempestuous war of God off the battlefield. And that's about it for Ares, at least for now. Despite being god of war and chaos, Ares stood as a warning against the dangers of unchecked passion and thoughtless action. Tellingly, Ares had followings among the Spartans and Thebans, warriors renowned not just for their skill and aggression, but also for their eager glorification of war. If you liked our video, don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel for more videos like this one.
Scott, you had your chance, okay? I already had someone created in my image. He's evil, he wants to take over the world,